Hi.
Hi, welcome. So with that, I want to welcome everybody to the Library Commission meeting of June 3rd, Thursday, June 3rd. And if we could, Jamie, if we can establish quorum, please.
Yep, I'll go ahead and call roll. I'll start with Commissioner Chan. Oh, it's not working. Oh, nope, I did just hear you. Oh, nope. We can continue to work on that. I'll continue down with Commissioner G.
Here.
And Commissioner Liu.
Here.
And Vice Chair Wheeler.
Here.
And Chair Bedard.
Here.
And and Commissioner, I did call Commissioner Carter, correct?
Hello.
No.
Okay, no, I did not. I apologize. I was going down my list, but we do have a quorum.
Great. And absent right now, hopefully she'll join us, is Commissioner Crane. I don't know if she's out or not. Jamie, if she contacted you. Are there any public comments or any members of the public who'd like to comment on items not on the agenda? If so, raise your hand.
And there are currently no hands raised. Great.
I mean, that's unfortunate. So we'll go straight into the informational items and receive information from county staff.
Good evening, Commission. Jennifer Weeks from the County Library District. Nice to see you all. I am going to share my screen real quick. And we are going from excellent. All right. So here we are already in June. The heat is telling us summer has begun. So summer reading 2021 has kicked off June 1st. Reading Colors Your World. So this is a program for all ages because we know reading is good for everyone. You read, sign up online on our Beanstack app or website, read 5 books, complete 1 activity, and you actually get a reward for signing up. So I hope you're all visiting the library, and this program will run through July 31st. We have made all programs virtual for all ages, so we have speakers, classes, STEM events, lots of wonderful things listed on our website. We have, of course, been addressing the movement through the yellow tier and removed any occupancy limits at the libraries, our visitor time limits. We've extended the computer use back up to 3 hours and made the small and medium meeting rooms available by reservation in some of our community libraries. We will continue to watch the governor and the county to see what next steps are taken. Currently, you do need to have a face covering in our libraries to visit, and we have limited seating, but again, we're looking forward to expanding services. I hope that all of you have visited our website or looked at our online newsletter. There has been an opportunity over the last year or so to try out some new services. I will give out a shout out to Chair Bedard for his wonderful review of Book Dash as a good example. And this survey that we have just put forth for the month is an opportunity for us to hear what has worked well for you all during this pandemic time, what services you liked, what may have been new to you. And so please take a moment to fill out that online survey and give us your input. Just down the road from you, as you've heard, Campbell Library is undergoing a $20 million renovation. And while that is happening, we have opened our Campbell Express Library. It is located in the community center, so we're really excited about the partnership there. Wonderful browsing collection, and that has extended hours in that smaller space, Monday through Thursday 10 to 9 and Friday and Saturday 10 to 6, keeping our staff together there in Campbell. Lastly, actually, this slide, we did have our Joint Powers Authority Board meeting today at 12 o'clock, where our final budget was adopted and our audit was approved. And onward, it's actually the end of the year for us, as our fiscal year will begin July 1st. And that is my report. Happy to take questions. And I know Rose has some other specific Los Altos news to share.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and view slideshow. All right. Okay, can everyone see it? Is it loaded? Okay, great. So as Jennifer mentioned, summer reading has started. I wanted to share some Los Altos specific things that are going on at for summer reading. For example, our wonderful children's staff have created this really nice display for summer reading. This is also system-wide, but available at Los Altos and all the children's desks. The children's staff have developed art kits, and there are some virtual art programs that go along with these art kits. And so just a sample of what it looks like. And every child can pick one up and do their own art as they get creative or participate in the art programs. So these are free for all children. This is the teen pouch for teens who sign up for summer reading. They do receive this pencil pouch, and then for reading 5 books at the end, they do get a nice gift card thanks to the Friends of the Library. And adults who sign up, there is a nice book bag there too. So as Jennifer mentioned, it is for all ages, so I encourage you all to sign up. At Los Altos, we also have a fun, it's been a tradition for years. They hide a character. In this case this year, it's a box of crayons to go with the theme, and children can visit the library every week, find the hidden picture in the children's room, and get a really fun prize. And also the prizes are funded by the Friends, so we thank the Friends for helping us continue that tradition. Statistics, items checked out for Los Altos from February to May, you'll see a 67.8% increase, which is great to see such a great increase, and patrons are, increasing their usage of our library. Included with items checked out, items checked in is a 54.2% increase, and that includes, our staff checking in items, as well as us turning on our automated machine, which has really helped. Patrons served in the library, it's an increase of 29.8%. So it's great to see things increase all across the board. I just want to highlight a couple programs for each age category. This is an ongoing program. It's our Lego Club, and it's every Friday at 3 p.m. Children are encouraged to create their Lego creations and submit it online to our website where they'll be in part of the gallery, and they can go online, share it with their family, maybe distant relatives who can view their art, their Lego creations. We also have one for art. Teens have a bookmark contest going on right now. They could download the entry form online and submit their entry either digitally or at the library. And for adults, there's a beginning watercolor program for that's going on June 22nd. I also wanted to bring back the information about our laptop kiosk. We never had a chance to implement it because as soon as we got it installed, the pandemic hit. So now we are going to have it ready to go. Patrons can check out a laptop to use in the library up to 3 hours, and you check it out with your library card. The great thing about it, you could print wirelessly, and it has all the software that is on our desktop computers. So there are 12 laptops available, and it's first come, first serve. So we're really excited to be able to offer that as an extended service in addition to our desktop computers. And I'll share this month for the town crier. The awareness subcommittee had a great idea to promote this. So we have our ad ready, and I'll share it with you guys so everybody will be able to see what's going into the town crier. So thank you to Freddie and Virginia and Carol for your help with that. Before I do that, I did want to update you on library services. As Jennifer mentioned, with the yellow tier, we have removed our capacity, but On better news, we do have a date to open Woodland. It's June 21st. Hours are going to be 1 to 6, Monday through Saturday, and all our services will be available there. So, staff have been working really hard to, get the shelves and the collection ready, check in materials, pull holds, so that then we're gonna have the building deep cleaned before we open, so that's ready to go. So we're very excited to be able to open Woodland. I think it's going out, the information's going out on Monday, officially announcing it, but I'm glad that we had this meeting so we could let all of you know. And let me just see, I made some, make sure I didn't miss anything on services. Unfortunately, Los Altos doesn't have meeting rooms, but small and medium meeting rooms have been open at other libraries since June 1st. So we're really happy to be continuing to expand services. So I'm gonna stop share, and then I wanna share the ad really quick because I just have to, let me see if it let me, okay. So this is the ad for the laptop kiosk that we'll be putting into the town crier. So thank you again for your help in getting our services out there into the community. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Rose. Are there any questions?
I have a question. Rose, how many laptops does the library have for people to check out?
We have with the laptop kiosk, it's 12 laptops.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Freddie?
No, just Rose, I'm assuming that as of Monday, when you guys make the announcement, it would be okay for us to put something on Nextdoor or whatever medium we could use to help people know that it's going to open on June 21st, Woodland, right?
Yes, that should be fine. Yeah, okay. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners' questions, Ying?
Just a quick question. For the laptop, I'm curious about, is that a Windows or Macintosh?
It's Windows, yes.
No problem, just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And how do people check out the power adapters or cables? Does it also come with the laptop, or the laptop can last for more than 3 hours?
Yeah, it does. It's actually charging while it's in the kiosk, and the way the kiosk is set up is even if somebody has just returned a laptop, it won't check that out to somebody and the next patron. It'll make sure there's a certain amount of charge in the batteries before the patron can check it out.
Okay, thank you.
So the patron doesn't get a power cable with it.
And the wire, the printing and everything is all wireless, so you don't need anything.
Correct.
It's wireless, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
All
All I can say is congratulations. Oh, sorry, Ying.
Maybe just a point of a clarification. So how does it work? Is the same as a desktop? Like there's a timer, so when it gets close to 3 hours, then it starts countdown. So because I think what I'm trying to say is, for instance, if this is being checked out by a student and they're just right in the middle of their homework, sometimes they don't want to be shut down and without access to their previous file anymore. So.
Yeah.
The server had been set up like, okay.
Yeah, it's just like the desktop ones. Yeah, they have a timer as well. So yes.
Okay.
And it's checked out to the patron's library card.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I don't have any more questions. Back to Pierre.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? I mean, as a comment, I can't believe, I'm so happy to see that Woodland's going to be opening up. Just personally, that's a really big thing, to say the least. In terms, I've been in the library since we've had this rolling opening, and it's been quite hospitable and a great place to hang out and read, which is something I've missed, and a place to work. I know Julie's not here, but she was interested in that, having a quiet place to go to. And thank you, Rose and Jennifer, for getting that stuff back up to speed. On the laptops themselves, I'm assuming that a patron could store their files on the net somewhere, right? Not on the laptop, but whatever their repository would be.
Yeah, if they have like a Google Drive, and they could also use a USB. So between patrons, everything resets so that whatever, if a patron happened to save something, it will reset. So the next patron who uses the laptop won't be able to access what the previous, for privacy reasons. Yeah.
And one last thing for the commissioners, at the next city council meeting, I don't know who's going to be there, but I know that in the past whoever was attending the city council meeting would speak about library events, especially something as major as Woodland opening up at the beginning in the public comments, provided the library's not on the agenda. And that goes also for Los Altos Hills. It's always something good to get out there. But thank you. Any further comments for county? With that, thank you, Rose, and congratulations. And I mean that. It's great to see this going the way it's going. So with that, we'd like to get information from the Friends of the Library, who have graciously been funding a lot of activities.
Well, thank you for hearing from me. I'm just back from a couple weeks away, so I don't have a formal presentation. But I did want to, last time I reported that we were going to have 2 sales back to back, and we had those, and they were very successful. We earned over $11,000 in revenue, 1,000 of which was donations to the school teachers, the K through 12 school teachers for books. And so that probably figures about 800 books or 750 books that teachers are now adding to their classroom libraries. Our next goal is to reopen our operations back to as normal as possible. As soon as we hear from the governor on the 15th of June, we can start getting our plans in place, but we really want to work hard to get all of our volunteers back, get a normal flow of operations going. A lot of this is due to the fact that the community has been very excited to provide donations. And we're getting so many donations. We knew that they were coming, but every time we have a donation session, we get more donations than we did the previous session. So now the onus is on us to process those books and then to sell them. And so if we try and go back to like a quarterly sale model, like we had in the past, we would have our next sale in late August. And we have applied to the rec department to use Lacey in August. We certainly are hoping, Jamie, that Lacey is going to be available because we really need this sale because we're going to be inundated with books. So we're very excited about all of that and moving forward and getting everybody back together and back to a normal routine. So anyway, that's pretty much all I had today. Any questions?
I have one.
Yes, Freddie.
Catherine, do you think you're going to get all of your volunteers back? I volunteer at the Discovery Shop, the American Cancer Society Discovery Shop. We have had not so much luck getting our volunteers back. They're still, I don't know if they just got used to not coming in or what, but do you think, how do you think you're going to do?
I think we're going to do pretty well because already we've had good response. to working in our current situation where we only have 2 people in the building at a time, in our portable at a time. And we've actually gotten new volunteers, quite a few over the last 3 months or so. There is interest. Now, that said, I mean, there will probably be some reticence, especially among the older crowd, you know, to come back. They're still going to be a little nervous that they may wait or they may not come back at all. So, you know, it's really hard to tell. But I think we're going to be doing pretty well overall. We just have to, you know, reach out to them and let them know that, you know, we have the protocols involved and we're accepting everybody. And people really are volunteers. A lot of them, they want to come. They volunteer with us, not just because they believe in reading and getting books out and stuff like that, but because it's a social event and it's a big, wonderful part of their life. And if we can have more people together at the same time, it'll be much more attractive to them.
Yeah.
So we're counting on it. So
Okay, I hope it works out. I really do.
fingers crossed.
Any further questions for the friends? My only comment is congrats on the 2 sales. I mean, that's a big deal and a big milestone. I've attended the Friends board meeting and it seemed like things were returning, you know, more to normal. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I do have to once again give a shout out to the History Museum for letting us use their space. But we anticipate that that will not be possible going forward because they're going to be opening up and having weddings and using, you know, revenue generating activities that would preclude us, which is why we're looking to Lacey, and then of course the new Hillview Community Center for later this year. Okay.
Great, thank you. And with that, let's move on to information item number 3. Cindy, the update on the NCLA.
Okay, NCLA may meet on July 26th, which is a Monday, at either 5:30 or 6:30, and that date is tentatively confirmed. Could I be any more hesitant about it? And then if we meet then, we will probably also have another meeting in August through October. We're actually doing the doodle poll right now. So what I want to suggest to you is that you're going to have choices of dates. The July one will be talking more about the budget, which will probably take up a lot of people's brain time. And we have the Los Altos Hills Commissioner always has to leave by, I think it's 6:30 or 7. So she's not able to stay for the entire meeting. And I think if you want everybody's full attention, that maybe the later meeting might be better, but it's your choice. I'm just letting you know what usually happens, what the pattern is. And also that meeting July or into the future will probably be in person, depending on what our governor decides to do about removing the Brown Act changes that he put in place. So we won't know obviously until June 15th or a few days after that. But you can pretty much count on it going, we will stop being 2-dimensional. We'll start with little rectangles. We'll start being full people again. Also, NCLA has been reconfirming with both Los Altos and Los Altos Hills on how each city will contribute to the infrastructure of NCLA. There have been some formal and informal agreements over the many years, decades that NCLA has existed. And through different changes, all 3 parties have realized that we need to reconfirm and update how we are working together and who contributes with what, including staff time, staff knowledge, and also financially. So if, for instance, is that we were relying on Los Altos attorney for any consultations that we would need. And that individual would often attend our meetings if there was something on the agenda that would probably call for legal opinion. And what we've done is we've transferred that to the Los Altos Hills attorney. We talked to that individual and he agreed to go on contract with NCLA. So we will be paying him when we use his services, which is very rare, but it's a change. So it's something to bring to everybody's attention. And then I also want to give you an update on Lolly. The Los Altos Library Endowment will be meeting this Tuesday. I have not yet sent out the draft agenda, so Freddie and Catherine, don't worry, it's on its way. But it doesn't look much different than the previous one, so there's no urgent things that we're going to be talking about. We did confirm a new vision and mission statement, and we will probably reconfirm it because we changed one or two words between the time we met and next Tuesday. So that will be at 8 o'clock. We've been plowing through things. So last time it lasted just an hour. We were done by 9, which was stunning. So I'm figuring 9:30, depending on how much people have to talk about things. And also in October, we are working with Rose and her team for Science and Technology Week. We are looking for a speaker, and we're looking for a speaker right now in artificial intelligence. That's been an area of a topic of interest to many people that have talked to us about what they would like to hear. So we have a strong possibility, and I will have updated news probably on Tuesday. So that's my updates. And are there any questions? So
Questions?
Bill, back to you.
Thank you. And I'd like to go to Jamie for a quick update on from the city staff.
Thank you, Pierre. All right. The first one is, as in the report, we are working with Los Altos Hills. This would be our 3rd annual. This particular event was canceled last year due to the pandemic, and we're still working on what those details will look like. But at this moment, I know Los Altos has enough players interested to form a team. But if additional people are interested, there are links to sign up if you are so interested, Los Altos and Los Altos Hills. This is limited specifically to residents of either Los Altos or Los Altos Hills. I know in years previously we've had interest from people our community members outside of Los Altos, but letting them know that it is specific to residents of those 2 cities. Next is our summer programs. Registration actually opened at the end of May, and that will cover programs that will occur during June 14th through the end of August 28th. And we are accepting registration now, and that will be through our new registration software system, which is Civic Rec, which I provided a presentation on last meeting, and then provided a little bit more of a reminder information about the new system that we did launch back in March. And it has been a very fun transition, only because it is there's so much better functionality with it, and it is much easier to use. So that has been going really well. And then we're still actually updating our virtual recreation center, which we did put in, links and information on the summer reading program that the library is doing, and then obviously continuing to update it with just information and activities. And then we are also updating information on our COVID-19 resource pages so that people have access to the most updated information, which, as everyone's kind of mentioned, kind of waiting for the June 15th date to kind of see what Additional changes might be coming out, so just trying to stay on top of those updates and making sure that that information is readily available as well. But that is everything for city staff.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, or actually I'll open it up. Any questions? Going once, twice. Okay, so we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. The first, so it's 2 separate items, 2 separate actions. I'll start with the first from our meeting on May 13th. Is there a motion?
I can make a motion to approve the minutes for the May 13th meeting.
Second?
I'll second.
Jamie, can you play? Do we need to take roll, or can we do this by acclamation?
It probably would be best to just to do a roll call.
Cool.
I'll go ahead and start with Commissioner Carter
Yes.
and Commissioner G.
Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan,
No.
Might need to go thumbs up or thumbs down.
Okay. I'm so sorry. And Virginia, maybe try, you could always log off and then log back in. I've found that sometimes that helps with some of the connection issues. Sorry about that. Vice Chair Wheeler
Yes.
and Chair Bedard.
Yes.
All right. Passes.
So with the second item is the minutes from Thursday, May 20th. The only question I had about the minutes, and I don't have it brought up, but it's very brief. Was Commissioner G's presentation attached to the minutes? Or if not, can we make that amendment?
No, we can absolutely attach it. It is posted as a report, and so we can absolutely include it with the minutes if that.
Well, if it's posted in the report, that's fine. I wondered whether it needed to be referenced.
No, absolutely.
It's just something that caught my eye.
No, we can definitely attach it.
Okay. So with that modification, do we have a motion?
I can I'll move to approve the minutes of the May 20th meeting with the attached presentation by Commissioner G.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Liu. And roll, please, Jamie.
Okay, we'll go ahead and start with Commissioner G.
Yes.
And Commissioner Carter,
Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Wheeler,
Yes.
and Chair Bedard.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we go to item number 6, the library redevelopment project history presentation, which, you've heard of the sizzle. Now this is the steak. So with that, I turn it over to, I welcome Diane. And I guess, I don't know who's going to be presenting, but between Diane and Cindy, welcome.
Well, I like A1 sauce on my steak. So I want to thank the commission, and I want to especially thank Freddie for continually asking me to find out more about the Woodland Library history, and then also to present an overview about the recent redevelopment effort of both libraries. And it's been a wonderful opportunity to get to talk to people in our town, both towns. and just to do some more digging and to put some thoughts together. And I meant to ask Jamie earlier. Jamie, I think a few months ago, you might have sent this current commission several links to documents from the task force. Great. So I'm not going to go through those, but I will reference them because they are filled with information, including little bits and pieces of history. So if you'll move over to the next slide. So I put together a chronology, and if you'll see all the way down the bottom, I want to acknowledge the people and organizations that helped me knowingly and unknowingly put this together, which is the Santa Clara County Library District, specifically Jennifer, and also the library, the NCLA previous library commissioners, and Susan Epstein. And I just want to let you know, I probably should have put draft across this because while I've gotten confirmation on these dates, I haven't gotten them absolutely confirmed. And being a librarian, it feels a little odd to not to have them absolutely confirmed, but they're relatively close or right on the nose. So Los Altos has had a library for a very long time, and similar to a lot of the libraries in our county system, it did start in a storefront. I grew up using the Cupertino Library in a storefront that was next to a pizza parlor, so I can only imagine that Los Altos was very similar to that. And look at where we both are now, very different environments and very different buildings since the 1950s. And then the Friends of the Library realized that we really needed to have a separate building, a facility that was a library, not just a storefront. And there were people that were actively involved in going door to door, talking to the residents about why we needed a library and what it would cost them. And Pat Johnson and Elaine Dobner were involved with this. It was really fun talking to Pat about how they did knock on the doors, because if you remember, the internet didn't really exist then. It might have been in the military, but definitely not for public consumption. And it passed. And so the first library was built. It was opened in 1964. And then in the 70s, a second bond measure was passed because they needed to increase the main library and also to build the Woodland Library. And again, that one passed quite easily. And everybody recognized that Los Altos is almost like, I want to say, a lizard or a snake. We're long and thin. We're not like an apple. We're not round. And so the South Los Altos people really needed to have their own. They needed a place closer to go to. And I also made the note that just please remember that Los Altos is the only district that has 2 libraries in our jurisdiction. The other thing I didn't put in here, but it's important to note, is that Los Altos and Los Altos Hills have a number of unincorporated homes in our area, and they do not pay taxes. They do not pay the NCLA tax to use the libraries, but of course they are part of our population base. So the library was renovated in the 1990s, and then Woodland was renovated in 2010. And that was jointly funded by Los Altos and the district. And then it was again renovated. And this is, you can read it as well as I can. In 2017, I put this one in because even though it's not about the building, it does show how NCLA spends the money. And we agreed to expand the hours of both of our libraries, and specifically, we got the Sunday hours for Woodland, because Woodland was only going Monday through Saturday with no Sunday hours. And that was a constant demand from the residents. And if any of you have come in on a Sunday, it is a well-used facility, just like the main library is. And we will continue funding that. We obviously did not have to do any funding during 2022 for either libraries. The district did not charge us anything for that. But we will go back to that model as soon as we need to. And then so in 2018, NCLA's then commissioners, which was led by Jean Mordeau, he was the mayor at the time, and he was also on the NCLA. He was very, very forceful in saying, we have the funds, we have the interests of the community. Let's go out and see whether we can either redevelop the main library or if we need to rebuild it. And on a personal note, it was really interesting to see John do this transformation, because up until he had a granddaughter, he wasn't a huge advocate for the library. He recognized some of its value, but he wasn't a big user of it. That granddaughter came along. As soon as she became a toddler, he was taking her to story time. He and his wife were using the library, and he said, wow, this is an amazing resource. We need to do something about it. So we have grandchildren to thank for the enthusiasm that NCLA brought to looking at redeveloping it. So going on to the redevelopment side of this chronology. So in 2018, and Jamie, if you would change the slide, please. In 2018, NCLA created the task force, and they created it after talking with the Friends of the Library Commission, and Lolly to see whether or not those four organizations wanted to come together and muster up the resources to get it done. So the first task force really consisted of four of us, so there was one representative from each of those groups. And at the time I was representing the Library Commission. Yes, I was representing the Library Commission. And then those four individuals realized very quickly that we needed to expand, that it was not enough to have four people. And it's also, if anything ever came to a vote, it could be a split. We might never have a majority. So we expanded it to 11 individuals, and to represent both towns. I will acknowledge that unfortunately we did not get strong representation from Los Altos Hills at the time. And I think it's not because people weren't interested. I think it's because they didn't get the information in a timely manner. And so if we were to do it again, I would make sure that everybody heard about it. We could have done a much better job of communicating that. So we met as a group, the 11 of us, and we broke into two main groups so that we could break apart the functions of what we were looking at. And before I go into that, let me say that at the same time we hired Group 4, which is a group that is a very well-known library consultancy, and they updated the 28 assessment. So the Friends of the Library had funded this with the intent of going forward to expand the main library, and the assessment is quite thorough, very good. And unfortunately, the city councils that were following the assessment just didn't have the appetite to go forward. And so it languished at that time. So when we hired Group 4, we asked them to take a look at that assessment to see if it still could stand up. And they did. They interviewed various groups of stakeholders, which included the Friends, NCLA, the commissioners, some city staff, and some city council members, and also Lolly. And then they also interviewed county staff and the library staff. I sat in on a library staff session, and I was just so impressed with all the ideas that they had, the observations they had about how they get their work done or didn't get their work done, plus how people use the library, because obviously they live and breathe in that space. So all of those stakeholders had a place and a voice to be heard. We did not have them interview the residents because at this time this was just a fact finding and observation amongst a small group of people. We didn't want to take it wildly public at that time. And also the consultants did go into the library. They spent time inside and outside the library to observe how it was being used and what the conditions were in the library. And that means, you know, how are things holding up? How is the staff able to adjust when new space is needed? And also how many people were in the library? How were they crowded or not crowded in there? So they came back with a confirmation that yes, more space was needed for the kinds of current services that were being offered, services that could be offered, but there wasn't the space, and then also future needs. And looking into the future 5 to 30 years out, of course, it's really difficult to go that far out, but you know that once a building's built, it has to last for many decades. It can't just be a one and done. So they gave some estimates. One of the barriers that we quickly found out is that if we're going to stay on the footprint or in the space that we currently have, we really can't expand outwards. That right behind the library is a conduit that takes all of the power into the city hall, into the other buildings. And of course we have the orchard. So we can go up and we can go down. So basically the footprint that we could go with would be 35 to 40,000 square feet. We also we hired Strata app, or however they say their name, Strata, to look at the feasibility of an architectural change. And we used them because they had already been working with the city, so they were very familiar with our city plans and our city regulations. And they said that yes, going up and down is possible. They also looked at whether or not we could take the existing building and renovate it versus a complete rebuild. And what they determined is that, yes, it could be renovated, but we would not end up with much new space and it would not be contiguous. That the way the building is currently built, they cannot go up on the current building, that the structure just cannot take a second story, which I was very disappointed in. I was hoping for an easy fix. I was really advocating for let's just remodel and go up, but they said no. And they also indicated that with all of the remodel things that we would have to do, including bringing the current building and the remodeled part up to code, it would end up costing almost the same, if not the same, as a complete tear down and rebuild, which I always find fascinating. But I've heard that before with people who are rebuilding their houses, that's why we see some tear downs, is because it's just cheaper to start from almost scratch. So that's the information that we have on Strata, and that was why we looked at, you know, not only what does the library need, and that's the business case, but here is the financial case and the architectural case. So going on to the next slide, let me take a breath and ask if there are any questions at this point.
Yes, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Cindy, what is the source of the land that Woodland sits on? Where did the city get that land?
I believe that was already city land. I haven't gotten an answer to that.
I would be very interested in knowing how that happened. It's an unusual looking piece of land, and I would like to know the history of that land and how it to be used for what it's being used for.
If you look at a lot of the land that's in South Los Altos that has city facilities on there, you'll notice that they parallel Foothill Expressway, and that there are these long, narrow strips of land. And this is just my best guess that it may be left over from when the train came through. So that it was almost easement and roads, and they just carved out those spaces because the city owned it. And because when you look at the fire station that's down there and the facility station, they're just long and narrow, just like Woodland is. So, but I will keep researching that, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All right, so back on the chronology. So part of what the task force did is we did ask Godby Research Associates, and you may have heard their name many times because the city and Los Altos Hills frequently use them to survey our residents. We asked them to do a survey with both towns to find out what would be the interest and the appetite for a revenue measure. And it could either be a tax, a parcel tax, or a bond initiative. And it came out pretty good, but not good enough. We're right on the fence of where, you know, you have to have 67%. You have to have 2/3 of a vote to pass this kind of measure. And so 62 to 64 says that, yes, people are interested and willing, but we needed to do more because we can't guarantee that that any initiative would pass. But we weren't way down low where it would be a very big uphill climb. So at that point, we contracted with TBWBH to figure out how to make the appropriate outreach to the community and to get the community engaged, to hear from the community. And we also did, later on during that time, we did a second pulse survey with similar results as the first. And we got more information from our two communities because we also did interviews. And this was with the intent of putting on a bond initiative on the November 2020 ballot. We had looked at all different types of election dates, you know, having it mid-year like March or having a special election. And we looked at the pros and cons of all of those dates. And we also looked, one of the pros and cons is what does it cost? And as all of you might be aware, that's what we're looking at right now is how much will the recall for Gavin Newsom cost our state? And it's exorbitant. So we made the decision that was not where we wanted to spend our money and that we would piggyback on the November 2020 ballot because there would probably be a high turnout for that ballot. But we were also concerned about the things that were going to be on the ballot and would there be too much going on in people's minds that they would just get to the point where they were just going to say no, no, no to almost anything. But we went forward, we used that as our target date. And we also, at the same time, we looked at a capital campaign committee, which was created by Lolly. And we hired a consultant, Chelsea Sousa, and I hope if you ever get to meet her, I hope you do get to meet her. She's a lively person. And she interviewed, Diane, you can help me remember, she interviewed about 30-some people?
We were aiming for 25 interviews with high wealth individuals in the community. I think we ended up with between 20 and 22 interviews. And these were in-person interviews. She actually went to people's homes, sat down with them, talked about their priorities for giving, explained, you know, what we were looking for with this project, and really tried to identify the likelihood that we would have if we ran a capital campaign, the likelihood at raising different amounts through a fundraising campaign.
And one of the outcomes that we received from that was that people were willing to go forward, but they also wanted a lot more information. And they also wanted to have a group of people come together to donate. No one wanted to be the first one out of the block. So we know that we live in a wealthy community in both towns, and they are a very thoughtful, wealthy community. They want to know how and where their money is going to be used, and they have to have a passion around it. So it was a very good learning experience for us. And the thing about using Chelsea was that she kept all of this information close to the vest. She did not tell us exactly who said what. So it was aggregated information, which I really respect, because if I ever get interviewed by her or somebody like her, I know that that's the structure that they live under and work with.
Cindy, one more thing. She did say there was potential for fundraising in the community, but there's a little bit of a caution on that, that many of the people she interviewed, in fact, most of them, have as their priority more national and international issues, such as addressing economic inequality, climate change, environment. So the caution was, while there is some potential in this community, don't set your goals too high and just realize it's going to take a bit of work.
Right. So, so this was towards the end of 2019 and moving into 2020. And I very distinctly remember I was in Canada at the end of February, and I was very sick. I was at a library conference, and I started to really pay attention to what is this COVID thing that people are talking about? By any chance do I have COVID? I'm going to be flying home and people are going to kick me off the plane. And so, and boy, the two ladies sitting on either side of me, I think they were ready to throw me out. I did not have COVID. I just had a really bad flu. Not that that was any better, but at least it wasn't COVID. But my point is that this was another compounding factor that we were starting to address, and realizing that on top of having a very strained 2020 election coming up, and the economy was starting to have difficulties, we were going into a pandemic, and this, around this time it was March, early March, and we hadn't yet been sent home. And at our next NCLA meeting, the task force made the recommendation that we needed to put a halt to this for the time being because of those factors and many others, that we did not think that it was worth anyone's time or the money or the voter, any possible voter negativity to put this on the ballot in November. So the task force made that recommendation, NCLA accepted it, and we disbanded the task force, because by disbanding, that allowed all of the task force members to go out and do what they wanted to continue this forward, but we didn't have to fall under the Brown Act anymore because we were no longer an official organization under NCLA. So that's where we are today. And NCLA, as we were closing this up, NCLA commissioners at the time encouraged us to stay enthusiastic, to stay on top of this, because they do still believe in the need for a library, whatever that looks like. And I want to say that's probably going to could look very different now that we have lived through a year plus of a pandemic. What does a library mean today? So, and I think that that's where we can get some really great ideas from Jennifer and Rose and the district staff, as where they see things headed forward as the commission, the Friends, Lolly, NCLA go forward with this concept.
Diane, do you have anything to add?
I think Cindy did an excellent job of going through the overview there and the history. The one thing I can think of to add is to talk a little bit about some of the outreach we did do in the community. So I led the committee that was really involved in outreach. And during 2019 and into early 2020, we went on an effort to really get the community feedback on if they saw a need for a renovation to the main library. And if so, you know, what were their experiences in the library? What things did they enjoy? What did they find challenging? And we talked to over 100 people in 101 interviews. There were 4 or 5 of us actually doing the interviews, and we sat down with these folks, and they ranged from teenagers all the way up to senior citizens, and we tried to get a great demographic, people from all different parts of Los Altos and Los Altos Hills, different age groups, etc. And we learned some really interesting things. We learned, as we all know, everyone loves the library. But we also learned, again, something that makes sense when you think about it. Usage of a library varies quite a bit over someone's life. It's very high when you're a child or when you have children. It drops off when you become an adult, and then the library becomes much more important to you once you are retired and become a senior. And given those things and listening to people's feedback, we were able to identify some very specific community-based messages around some of the challenges the building had. And that supplemented what we heard from staff. It supplemented our own observation. It supplemented the studies. And I would say spending the time to do those sit-down meetings with people was extremely valuable. And after that was all completed, then we did follow up with a more quantitatively based survey around needs and messaging and things like that. And so that's, we were very busy in 2019, and that was just the one thing, Cindy, you went through really quickly, but I thought I would expand on that a little bit because we wanted to make sure we took the time that we could hear from what the community wanted, we could respond to their questions, and then that was feedback into the outreach we had planned and never got it to complete, into 2020.
Right. I was one of those people that did several interviews, and I interviewed a couple of Los Altos Hills commissioners, council members, and the feedback was, first of all, they gave us so much time. We asked for 30 minutes, and they frequently went over that. So they just people provided such interesting insights into how they use information and how they use the library. And then there were a lot of surprise moments where they did not know that here are things that they could be doing and using in the library. So just as an aside comment, the fact that the ads are showing up in the town crier, I think is just an excellent touch point for everybody because the ad is big, it's bold, and it's one message. So carry on.
And there were some concerns that we heard that we didn't think of as a task force. There were concerns about connectivity, concerns about, having power at every workstation. Those made sense. But one of the concerns that was interesting that I wouldn't have thought of not being a parent, and one of our task force members grabbed right a hold of this, one of the concerns that consistently rang true with parents and grandparents who take their children to the library is the fact that the restroom is not within the confines. Rose is nodding. Yeah, it's not within the confines of the children's area. So if you have a child with you who needs to go to the restroom, you have to go with them and get up and go to the bathroom and come back out. So we learned quite a bit, things like that I think many of us would have never thought of. So it was well worth the time.
So
I just want to add that.
Oh, go ahead, Pierre.
I just want to add, I faithfully attended a lot of the redev as a member of the public, so there'd be somebody from the public there. And one thing I learned from the Godby surveys is exactly what Diane said. The thing that motivated people to vote yes on a bond were things around safety, be it for the children, the restroom issue, or be it for earthquake retrofit. Those were the things that seemed to bring it over the top. The aggregation of the services and all that was like fine, but really the almost Maslow's hierarchy for, the baser needs that people have around safety really drove their decisions in that survey.
Yes, thank you, Pierre. And we had decided by the time we reached February that as we went forward to the bond measure, that was really, we were going to focus on the age and the infrastructure within the building with a strong focus on safety as well. Interestingly enough, the main library, and I hope I'm not scaring anybody, but though it was remodeled in 1993, the designs were actually completed in the late 80s. And it was prior to the Loma Prieta earthquake and prior to the Northridge earthquake. And while the building meets code, and it met code at the time it was built, if we would scrape it and start over again, there's a lot of things that would be done differently.
Right.
So are there questions? Commissioner Liu, if you want to queue up, please raise your hands on the thingamajob. Sorry, Commissioner Liu.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I've definitely been, blown away by the history and the level of details. I think Cindy and Dan, shared it with us. It's absolutely amazing, like how much work has been done over years. And I felt like after reviewing the file, the presentation, at least me personally, I feel more motivated to help push it through. And then on the other side, I think I have a question about have we done any benchmark with our neighboring cities and see if there are any sort of, I wouldn't say best practices, but any success stories that, we learn from them and see how they came around, with a project like this.
Oh, thanks for
a benchmark on redevelopment projects?
Yeah, redevelopment project, because I know Palo Alto has done, renovated their libraries, and I think there are other places like Mountain View, they did something with their library as well. So I'm curious about if there's any success stories we can learn from.
We did. We actually invited the Palo Alto Library Director to speak with us, and she gave us a lot of background. And I had actually heard her and a couple of her staff members speak at another meeting. And then we read some of the other libraries' documents that went through this process, both here in our county and our surrounding areas. So we did gather a lot of information from others. And yeah. I have a stack of reports from other cities about their processes.
And the county staff is really helpful. I sat down 2 or 3 times with Jennifer's predecessor, Nancy Howe, and talked through what had been done in Morgan Hill and Gilroy, what was in process at the time with Campbell. So there is a lot of information out there about how different communities actually were able to successfully proceed through the process from identifying needs to a new building. What is pretty consistent, though, is support of city council.
Yes.
It consistently took a lot longer than people hoped it would. But beyond that, most situations were unique to their own community.
Mm-hmm. And that was one of the pleasant factors about using our consultants. They came with that history of working with many different types of libraries, and they guided us through the process. So we got to not only hear firsthand how other organizations did it, but we heard through the consultants' eyes, and our consultants had a strong familiarity with Los Altos and Los Altos Hills, so they could put it into some perspective for us.
Vice Chair Wheeler.
So Cindy and Diane, the pandemic got it, and the pandemic essentially just put a big stop sign on the effort. Do you have a sense of when the effort might start again?
Well, I think that you've started it. That's why NCLA is willing to put it on the agenda. They want to hear from the Library Commission because they don't want to be the only organization that's interested in doing this. They want to hear how enthusiastic and committed other volunteers to the cities are. So yeah, you've already started this little snowball.
Okay. So do you think then that the Woodland project might be folded in? Might it precipitate starting the main library redevelopment all over again? And if it did, would they be combined as one redevelopment task? Or how do you think it might proceed? Or is it kind of impossible to tell?
I would say it's impossible to tell at this point. I know that when we were interviewing people, people would ask us about Woodland. What can we do for Woodland? But it came up, but it wasn't a top issue. It was just mentioned by some of the interviewees. And I think that if you take a look at the chronology, Woodland has had a lot of attention paid to it over the years with the rebuilds. And so it's the most recent one compared to the main library. So some people might question that. You know, why Woodland? Why not the main library? Or what could we do for both? And that the other thing that we saw happening was that it adds to the price tag. So are we going to have have both of them not be as good as one could be? So those are all questions for you all to ponder and be prepared, because I'm sure NCLA commissioners will be asking those questions.
Yeah, and I think practically speaking, Freddie, it might be very difficult to tack a main library onto Woodland versus tacking Woodland onto a main library. So we had discussed and were seriously considering, and likely would have written a bond measure if it would have gone to the 2020 ballot, that would have allowed some of the money that was raised to be spent on Woodland.
Yeah.
It didn't seem pragmatic or the right thing to do, honestly, to write a bond measure only for the one facility.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the cost of renovation, I think arguing it the other way around, or if you're trying to get your funding for Woodland, let's just say, I'm just going to throw out a number. You want $5 million for that. And then here's this tail, which is the main library, that's 50 to 60 million. I think that's a harder sell. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I'm kind of like, I mean, it would be, I think, so much easier, especially if you're also looking at the wealthy families that we have. It's a small number. The Woodland number is so much smaller. It seems so much more doable. And especially if maybe half of it, at least, could be raised through philanthropy. So that's just my concern is as a standalone, especially with the economic situation being what it is today, we don't know how long it's going to take the city to recover. It would be a smaller pill to swallow if it's just the Woodland.
Right.
I have a question, and that is, do you need,
Sorry, Nelvin. Commissioner Liu had her hand up.
oh, how do you do that? How do you raise your hand?
You go into the panelist panel, and there's a raise hand button at the bottom of it.
So I
Go
thought
ahead,
Chair, you have a question ahead of me. Why won't you ask first? So I didn't see you ahead of me.
Well, because out of respect for you, I'll follow up after you guys is okay.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll try to be quick, and I have two small questions. I think one question is, I think for our sort of the development task or future of library subcommittee, we did a meeting with Cindy, and I think Cindy shared with us some historical files. But on the other side, it sounds like there are more files or documents, probably, Diane and Cindy had accumulated over time. So do you think there are any more information, for us, like the newer library commissioners need to be aware of and, should better educate ourselves before we sort of talk about action plan for the future? So that's being one of the questions. And secondly, actually tied to that question, also sound like just because of a pandemic, and uncertainty in the economic situation. So the marketing plan or the outreach plan were put on hold. So is there a document to show what kind of plan that is? So for us as the future of library subcommittee member, I guess we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and then we can probably learn about what has been done and what needs to be done from the previous sort of the task force people. Thank you.
Well, I would need to see the list that Jamie sent you to see if there was anything substantial that we could share with you, that's different from what Jamie, because I think you probably sent them several links and documents.
Cindy, actually, it was modeled after the one that you actually put together. So it had all of the studies, including the original 2008. It actually included links because at that point you had done some presentations to City Council as well.
Right.
So it actually included all of that. But I will find that and review that and make sure, and then we can double check and make sure if there's anything else or additional that might be helpful.
To your question though on outreach plan, a key part of coming up with the outreach plan was first really identifying the community needs, what resonated with people, through the one-on-one interviews, really trying out some of the messages. And I would say that's a good place to focus early on in a project. I hate to say this, but I feel that for the main library redevelopment project, we would have to start that all over again. I mean, to me, and I don't know if you agree with this, the pandemic was such a stressor, not only on the economic situation, but on people themselves. And we still haven't exited from it. And I'm sure if we would ask Rose and Jennifer what their model is for library services over the next 3 years, it's probably a head scratcher. And that's the sort of thing that really goes into a large redevelopment project like what we did, we're planning on doing. So I would say if you're looking at something more like the Woodland project that you're working on, that one is a little more straightforward as far as outreach, and I could outline, the steps I would recommend, but one of the first things is just talk to people, talk to patrons, talk to staff, and listen to what they tell you, and try some of your ideas, because that's going to help you start understanding what kind of outreach you may need to do. If you're going for private financing, it's a different type of outreach because you're really looking at one-on-one conversations with high net worth individuals. If you're looking for public financing, then it really needs to be a broad-based effort to get the community to support it. And that's just a really brief answer to your question, but as this proceeds, I think you'll have a little bit more idea of the strategy that will make sense for you.
And outreach also includes both towns' council members. Mm-hmm. So they need to be on board, or they need to be aware. And so that I interviewed 2 of Los Altos council members, and one gave me a neutral reaction and one gave me a neutral to negative reaction. So, but that was good because then we took that information and figured out what kind of information do we need to give these individuals so that we can move them over to be supportive. So I'd rather hear the negative stuff rather than have them bury it and then all of a sudden be surprised.
Cindy makes a really good point. I mean, I would suggest speaking with patrons, some number, it doesn't have to be a lot, and to staff to really understand if there's support for the objectives you're trying to reach, but then quickly pivot to, I would say, Los Altos City Council initially, and talk to as many of them one-on-one as you can to get their feedback on your proposal, because the building is on city property. Any sort of redevelopment will be staffed by city staff, and so you really need to make sure to test the idea with them and sort of get some reactions and some feedback. You're not going to get a decision or support from anybody initially, but you'll get some sense of where things stand.
And actually, Diane just triggered a big memory for me. One of the other factors that we looked at for going forward or not going forward was the huge turnover that was happening within the city. And we also knew that we were going to have new council members. So it was really, we could see that the staff was shrinking, and how could we get their attention on something like this, that the city manager would have to say, I don't have the resources. So it was just yet one more element to stepping away from it for 2020.
Commissioner G. Melvin.
Yeah, I'm here, and I was wondering if there needs to be any sort of formal process by which we would communicate in such a way to reactivate the NCLA redevelopment task force, or are you thinking that just showing interest is going to be sufficient? I would imagine you'd want some communication from the Library Commission as a whole, right?
Well, I think that when you present to the NCLA, that you should come with an ask, because they will ask, well, why are you here? Is this information, or is there an action that you want from us? So they may not take the action at that meeting, but they will take it under advisement and decide what to do forward.
Yeah, and I think that there will be a near-term ask, which is consideration of plans for expanding Woodland, and perhaps on a longer-term basis, redeployment of the task force, looking much further out in the future.
Well, and remember, NCLA can go so far with that, and then of course it has to go to city council and city staff for redevelopment of any space.
It is a complicated, oh, I'm sorry, Pierre. It is a complicated government structure, but I agree with Cindy. Your first gate to get action taken is with NCLA, but they cannot guarantee that the Los Altos City Council will support it. They can at least give you the go-ahead to take that next step.
So questions and observations, I guess, from myself. First, the last meeting where we all sat together was where the commission brought together the NCLA, the city councils, all the parties involved right before pandemic to see where we were going with everything. And so the commission took a much stronger role in terms of trying to guide this as opposed to the NCLA redevelopment subcommittee that was formed. I truly believe the Woodland, the question came up about Woodland and the main library. I think what we're proposing, what the subcommittees are looking to propose for Woodland are doable, provided we have the right asks and don't necessarily need a bond measure. And we have two different organizations, not to put Lolly and the Friends on the spot, that do have monies that need to be spent for the benefit of the citizens, as does the NCLA. But overall, I always saw our view, the one thing we needed to do was getting the bond measure on the ballot without even thinking what the library is going to look like, you know, whether it's green, blue, or whatever. Allocating the monies to do something is really key. And I think Campbell took that approach. Have you looked at Campbell, or have we talked to Campbell about their multi-threaded approach to the redevelopment?
Are you asking Cindy and I, or are you asking?
Yeah, Cindy, yes.
I did talk to Campbell, and then I talked to Nancy Howe, who was involved with Campbell. I liked Campbell's approach. They took the message around safety and infrastructure, and they combined the library and the I believe it was the police station.
Yes.
That's right.
One measure. But that was unique to their city. I mean, they had two facilities that badly needed updates. And there honestly wasn't a whole lot of library messaging, uniquely library messaging around what they did. It was really more of an aging building type of approach. So we did look into that. It was something that I think with the main library could have worked if the situation sort of evolved that way. I don't know if you have that same argument when it comes to Woodland.
Right.
No, not, I don't think with Woodland, but certainly with the buildings on the Civic Center.
Yes.
We definitely need a police station.
Yes.
And, but anyway, my only point to this was, having sat through a lot of the stuff, is really getting, and it's sort of extrapolated the issue and saying, hey, get the money first, then worry.
It was get the money first and then worry, but if we were going for the bond measure for the main library only, we found with the community members, we needed to explain what the new library was going to offer. But we were trying to avoid making any commitments around specifics inside the building itself. So what I mean by that, we weren't going to commit that there would be 2 community rooms and 5 meeting rooms. We weren't going to commit that the children's room would double in size. We weren't going to make those specific commitments. But what we could talk about and avoid any design of a building is there would be more children's space. There would be more meeting rooms. So here, there was some sort of a communication of what people would get for their money, but it was still get your money locked in, know what budget you have, and then figure out what you could do for the building.
An interesting history. Are there, commissioners, any other questions before we move forward? Okay, thank you very much. Oh,
Well, before I go, I just wanted to let you know, Catherine, with the Friends, she was also on the task force for quite a long period of time. So I'm sure she's just smiling away behind all of this.
Behind her dark blank screen.
Catherine, do you have any comments or?
No, I mean, I think Cindy and Diane did an excellent job of summarizing everything. It was, my sense was there's some frustration in that, you know, not everybody's on board with our idea of, you know, library being a priority for the community. A lot of people thought that the staff and the services that are being offered right now are wonderful.
Yes.
And why would we want to do anything more? I mean, they do everything that we need. You know, I get my books, I get my online stuff, you know, Rose and her staff, they're responsive. Why do I need more?
Mm-hmm.
And which means, of course, paying for more. And when my view, or these people's view, is that they do a great job.
Right.
So, you know, and that was frustrating to me and a lot of the task force because we've seen other examples all around and know that it could be better and it could be substantially fantastic. But here we are. Anyway, so I don't have a lot to say, anything more than what they've already said.
Here we are is extremely good commentary for the situation.
Thanks, Catherine.
And thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Diane. This was well worth, we ran a little long, but your presentation's well worth it. And the history is fantastic.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Ying, one last question.
Not necessarily a question, but probably a comment based on what Catherine just said. Honestly, I've been thinking about how we can continue to raise the awareness of, what a library really means to us. So what sort of motivated me was last year, my daughter's school had a project to allow students design, their dream schools. So what I'm thinking is, of course, this can be part of so that's the reason why I was interested in the outreach plan. If we can initiate something to work with our local school and have the students design the future of their dream library, I think that could be something and really an indication of what it really means, to the students and how a library can change people's life. But anyway, that's probably one of a zillion ideas. But I think I just after hearing what Catherine said, I do feel like there definitely a lot of work needs to be done. But at the same time, I think we need to find ways to solicit ideas and then really make sure that people understand the value of the library.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, the tricky thing is in messaging for building redevelopment, especially when so many people are so happy with the services they get and the way the building is you somehow have to say, despite how happy you are, things could be better. Or despite how happy you are, there's still some problems here that you're not aware of. And if you remember Cindy's slides when we were looking at the library redevelopment for the main library, 62 to 64% were yes, we want it. It's that 36 to 38% were the ones that most of them, it's great, don't touch it. And then there are always the percentage, under 10% that are no for every tax. But anyway, back to the messaging, somehow awareness building is you want to encourage people to enjoy and use their library, and at the same time, you have to say, look, but it's not quite good enough. So that's the trick.
Yeah, I think
Thank you for the time.
Super important, for Los Altos Hills, if people follow, I think the ALPR camera thing would be a good example. A couple of years ago, I was told, I honestly didn't pay attention to that a couple of years ago, but I was told, the city council didn't really, was not in favor of that project. But then this year, there are definitely a lot of grassroots effort to raise the awareness. And then there was 5-0 approval after all that. But again, I'm just trying to say, I think I totally understand the frustrations, but then at the same time, I'm hoping that, we'll kind of work together and figure out how we can get the additional 5% people on board.
So Cindy, Diane, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll go to our next item because we've got a lot to cover today, which is the work plan. I'll start off the discussion on it. The only thing I'd like to suggest is that the subcommittees look at the work plans for any possible modifications and updates for our next meeting. If anyone else would like to comment on the work plan, but that's essentially my only comment on that item.
And to piggyback off of what Pierre said, as you do make progress on some of the projects that you're working on, if we can have the work plan reflect those, and you can always send those edits directly to me so that that can be reflected in the work plan.
Actually, a correction, Jamie, we do have a work plan subcommittee, which is Ying and myself. So either to all three of us, and we'll maintain that document.
Yeah, and actually thinking just so that we don't have, so we don't get a quorum of commissioners emailing, I can always, because I know you and Ying have been updating that document. If the other subcommittees have changes, I can get those to Pierre and they can.
Cool. Great. Any other comments from anyone on item number 7, the work plan? So with that, we are going to go to commissioner reports. And I think the big chunk today is on the infrastructure subcommittee.
Okay, so Nelvin and Carol and I worked on this project. And Jamie, would you share the screen?
Oh, I was muted. Will do. I'll bring it up.
Thank you. We put together this PowerPoint presentation for the entire commission to take a look at tonight so that we can get your input. And Diane and Cindy are also very, very interested in your input because this is the draft of the presentation that we were thinking of presenting to the NCLA. So next slide, please. So this is just the background. Woodland branch serves a growing population in South Los Altos, and actually South Los Altos has a larger population than North Los Altos. The number of children are increasing. We are getting more data. Rose is helping us with this data. This project was initiated when I was a new commissioner and met at the Thanksgiving seniors luncheon at Grant Park. And when I was introduced as a library commissioner, I was immediately inundated with people who wanted to talk to me about the Woodland Library, and they had complaints about the noise levels in the library, that they were unable to really use the library because the children who also frequent the library and are patrons make a lot of noise. And they also make noise even when they're going outside, the door opening back, all open, close, and then out on the patio, you can hear them. There are a lot of St. Simon students who are at the library, and they go there after school. They use the library to study. They use the Wi-Fi in the library. They are also a lot of tutors who tutor kids at that library. St. Simon has advised us that this library branch, the Woodland Library branch, is very important to their program. The current footprint is less than 5,000, but there is a lot of room for expansion on that property. So could I go to the next slide, please, Jamie? This is the location of the Woodland Library. It's right close to Foothill Expressway. There's a frontage road grant, and it is really towards the very southern part of South Los Altos. Could you go to the next slide, please? These are pictures of the inside. I don't know how many people have actually been to the Woodland Library, but when you walk into the door, to your right is the children's section, and that's actually the largest section of the library. On the right-hand side, this shows you the small adult section. There's a counter on the window where you can see the gentleman with his laptop leaning against the counter with counter stools. So you can sit up there and use your computer, or you can read or whatever you want to do. But there's a few chairs, lounge chairs to read. And then there's this kind of card table with 4 chairs. Next slide, please. Between the two areas is this area where there are computers for patrons to use. And then you can see also on the right here, there is a section where there's the library staff uses it. They have a counter, their service counter, and behind them is an area where their offices are, and books are back there, and that's their work area. Next slide, please. This is an example of the proposed expansion, and it also shows you the existing library. So on the left is the adult section, and then the stacks of books. There's a lot of stacks of books on that section. There's the children's section in the middle, and then the library staff space. And then the proposed expansion would be on the far right. And what you're seeing shown in this slide is an expansion of approximately 3,500 square feet or so. And, it can be sound, I'm using the word sound enclosed room because it's not really soundproof, but we're trying to have a room like a teen room or something where kids could be loud, have their tutors, etc., and it wouldn't bother the rest of the patrons. And then a community room is proposed. Next slide, please. This is from the Patron Survey, and one of the key statistics that's interesting is the Woodland's specific library results. They got a very low score for meeting and group study rooms being available, and hence the idea of the community room as a meeting room. They also didn't get a great score on quiet areas, which is directly above that. So next slide, please. Another view of the space considered for expansion. The dark area is the adult section and the stacks. The area in the middle is the children's area and the library staff, and then the blue area is the space available for expansion. There's plenty of room for expansion with the 25-foot setbacks that the city requires. Next slide, please. So here's another view from overhead, and I wanted to point out that if you take a look at the long red triangle on the left side of the slide, that's an area that can be used for expanded parking. There could be a lot of parking spaces, and the exit from the road that takes you into the library parking area could be just expanded, and you could exit onto Grant Road at the very end of that rectangle. So there is room for expanded parking. When you look up in the upper area, there's in the red rectangle, that's also the room that could be used for expansion. Next slide, please. This is just photos that I took of that area. It's being used for absolutely nothing right now. They've cut some trees down, so unless the city has cleaned up this lot, there's a lot of just chopped up trees that are lying in it now, but it's not used. It's not used for anything, and there's a lot of land there. I also wanted to show you in the slide on the right, you can see the 3 windows and then the gray door. And one of the ideas was that the expansion would go to just about to that gray door and then all the way to the back of the building, and then build out from that going south or towards this collection of wood that's in the middle of the lot. The reason for that would be visibility, but that again is all in the design, and there will be a lot of work. If this goes forward, there would be a lot of professional people who could figure out how this should be best designed. Next slide, please. That's it. And so it's now we'd very much like to have your thoughts on this presentation and on the expansion. Cindy and Diane, I'm really interested to hear what your feedback is, especially. You know, I mean, I'm interested in everybody's, but I'm really interested in hearing what you think and how this, you know, if it's an appropriate slide presentation for NCLA.
I only have one comment, and that is excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I mean, really good. The only thing you should do is ask for funding from the NCLA for the next step, which would be somebody to go in and actually work up a study similar to what's been approved on Halsey House, per se. And the $50,000 earmarked for COVID relief, I think would be, I mean, that's the only comment. Make the ask. Okay. And give them something to decide on. But otherwise, this presentation, in my opinion only, spot on, fantastic, great work.
And thank Melvin. He put it together and made it look good.
Catherine, you're muted.
Catherine, you're muted.
So, sorry. So I have an opinion that is my own, not Friends of the Library.
Okay.
If you're going to do an enlargement project at Woodland, I would go for the maximum available space and do that. It seems not efficient to do a smaller, you know, take of all the space available, just take a portion of that and do a project, because our needs will only get bigger. And I would just go for it and do the whole thing. And having maybe smaller meeting rooms that you know, adding a couple of smaller meeting rooms and including, you know, as well as the bigger ones that you've been describing, rather than wait 25 years and then try and grab that little bit of space because we're going to need it in the future. We know we're going to need it in the future. I would just grab as much as available and do it. It's not going to, because the type of rooms you're describing are not that expensive to build. You're doing meeting rooms and multi-purpose rooms, and maybe they have sliding, you know, walls, so you can make them bigger and smaller and stuff like this. But I would just go for it. That's my personal opinion.
Catherine, would you think the reason we were thinking of just doing, you know, almost maybe a little more than half was because one of the issues was staffing. And when we met with Bryant and Rose, they told us that unless the librarians could stand at their counter and look into those rooms, then they would have to have additional staff because they'd have to be able to be in there. So that was the idea of trying to have the rooms so that number one, they're all glass walls, and so that their librarians could see in there. And then the other thought was that the rest of that area that would go, I guess, west, could also be used for parking. It wouldn't be a lot of spaces, but what I was thinking perhaps is you could put the handicap parking spaces there and then free up the other spaces. So that area could be used for parking. But I understand your point, and if it weren't for the visibility limitation, it would, to me, make absolute sense to just build the whole thing. So it's a trade-off, and I don't know what the right answer is.
So in terms of step, I mean, obviously Rose and the library people have to make the call on this, but what I see is, you know, I was looking at the Palo Alto Middlefield campus or, library. And they have small meeting rooms that can be checked out by adults
Mhm.
from the community to have smaller meetings and have smaller meeting spaces. This would not necessarily be used by the teens in addressing the teen issues that you're talking about. I would think that this, at the most, it would be a scheduling issue on the part of the library staff, that they wouldn't have to monitor those spaces like they would the
True.
teen spaces, right?
Yeah.
And you could have outside doors so that you could access those spaces outside of library hours and that sort of thing. And then this would be a design issue for, library architect person. But we need that kind of space. I mean, and to me, it seems senseless not to just go for it and build it in right away.
That makes a lot of sense. And so, Rose, if they were small meeting rooms that were checked out by adults, would you have to be able to look in them?
So I think, yes, for any library space, library staff, the library is responsible for the safety of our patrons and maintaining a safe environment. So yes, I think with any space, staff would still need to make sure, everything, whether it's visible or not, but that just to make sure that the space remains safe, and that we have an adequate staffing for that. So yes, I believe so.
Okay. So then there is the issue of, as I understand it, so staffing becomes a real limitation issue because it has to do with, just because we got extra space and we need another staff person to monitor it, doesn't necessarily mean that the county is going to hire somebody. There's a different set of rules for how how the county is going to hire people. And I'm not sure I'm saying that very elegantly or very diplomatically. And I'm not quite sure how to say that very diplomatically, but that was a big red flag. And that was why we were proposing it the way we were, so that there would be visibility. Rose, maybe can you explain?
Yeah, I'll try as best as I can. Chuck, who does our finances, would explain it better, but there is a formula that for staffing that we are given at the library, and that is a set budget. So, and we share that same budget for Los Altos and Woodland. We have one, the formula shares the same for both libraries. So that is how our staffing is determined. So there are very, we have to follow some strict guidelines for that.
And the other kind of part of that formula is that Los Altos's budget is also compared to Campbell's, compared to Cupertino's, and doesn't it have to do also with how many patrons and et cetera? So they are not going to hire one more person for us just because we have more space, is what I'm trying to say. Is that accurate, Rose?
Freddie, I'm going to chime in just for the district. So there is a formula, and it is based on assessed value, your library use, essentially, and your population. So everyone, so that's how those are then distributed by personnel, by materials budget, et cetera. So obviously, you have a much lower circulation at Woodland than you do at Los Altos. Campbell's lower than, so it's kind of that equity piece of the amount amount of work and the people coming in and using a facility. So certainly, you know, we would be looking at creating successful environment and space within any kind of a facility that we are operating in. So so I think our previous conversations of looking into the crystal ball, right? What do you want it to be in 3 years, which is realistically when you would even get this built, having just been through several of these over the past time, right? Is it those meeting rooms? Is it, again, the community room? And how would we program those spaces? So I think that's really important for us to be looking at the community needs, looking at, as you said, you know, your information from your seniors at the picnic, and having conversations with St. Simon's School to ensure that we are, you know, making the right opportunities available for someone. It's an experience, right, when they come into the library. So for instance, you wouldn't throw a bunch of 10 and 11-year-olds in a room and not have them be, you know, in a space, right? So I think that we absolutely want to look at what that experience could look like and then that would help us determine what resources and capacity we would need to put around those. But certainly more, you know, just again, inviting more people into your space brings upon the need for more resource and more capacity. So Rose and her team would need to kind of determine all of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But it is important, I think, just to clarify. So if we have small meeting rooms that people could have like business meetings in, that they could, or that's where the tutors could go so that they wouldn't be out in the open, you know, and maybe creating less noise. Do you need to be able to see inside those rooms?
So yes. So as much as, and I say this with the greatest love for libraries, people say to me, you know, are they safe? We do all we can to ensure that a public place that's open to the public and to all, because that's part of our mission, is. And we do everything we can to ensure that there are not hidey corners and there are not locked doors and there are opportunities for mischief. I'm going to leave it that way. So in fact, we just put in a conference room in Cupertino Library. It does have all glass front. We have, I'm trying to think of, we're in the middle of the Campbell project, as you well know, again, glass fronted. So soundproof, yes, but not private per se. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And that confirms why, Catherine, we are asking for about 3,000 or so square foot space that is positioned such that standing at that counter that you saw in one of the slides where the librarians, you know, that's where they are usually at unless they're doing something else. But they can stand at that library counter and be able to look directly into those rooms. That's the goal, so that we don't, so that we are, because if they cannot staff it, we can't build it. I mean, it's, you know, it's a catch-22. We could build it, but they can't use it if they can't staff it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I completely understand. I completely understand. But I would like to think that a creative library architect could possibly figure it out. And I wouldn't want to just rule it out ahead of time. If there was a way for them to do exactly what you think. I mean, I would invite you to go look at the Middlefield Library. And they have the private rooms, they have glass fronts, you know, so you can see in the room. If there's a little hallway, I don't know. If there was a way to do it, I would just hate to miss the opportunity to maximize right up front, because then if you have to go back and redo it, it's just more expensive and less, you know,
I think it could be done if we were willing to redo the inside of the Woodland Library. You'd have to redo the whole thing. You'd have to reconfigure the whole thing so that, because what's up against that wall, there's the bathrooms.
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, you can't.
Well, you know, I don't want to belabor it. This is my own personal opinion.
No, I understand. I'm just saying it would be a more involved, more expensive, and it would require redoing the existing building in order to make that visible to the librarians if we built more than what we're suggesting.
I understand.
I've raised my hand, but my only comment there is what I said before. Let's get the seed funding to sweat out all these details.
Yep.
Because the money's there, and ask for it and we'll figure it out. I think there's a good solution here. I really do. This is a good idea.
I like the idea.
So Cindy, do you think going in and asking for $50,000 to do a feasibility study is a reasonable and good ask?
I think you're going to get a lot of questions. So I think that you can make the ask and then be ready for the questions. Just like at the city council when they were asked for the money for Halsey House. Figure is going to be that kind of, because you've got 3 council members on NCLA, so they're all looking at budgets.
Who are I know it's Nisa and Sally. Who's the third?
It's the woman from Los Altos Hills.
Lisa Schmidt.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes.
Okay, yes.
Who won by.
It doesn't
vote.
matter. She's on the council.
I know she won, but I just.
Okay. So Cindy, do you have some time to talk to Nelvin and Carol and myself, maybe, and to just let, throw around some of the questions that you think would be asked and
Sure.
what they're going to be looking for? Great.
Yeah.
I'll send a group email to ask for timing, who's got what time. And let me see. Oh, my cursor doesn't work.
And I strongly suggest that you meet with the council, well, all the members one-on-one with the presentation even prior to the meeting and go through your logic and stuff, because you'll probably find some easy refinements you can make based on their questions, and something always comes up, and it's a lot easier to have it come up in private than in the NCLA.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think we should talk with Nisa and Sally, and we can't talk to Jonathan because he has to recuse himself because he lives too close, but we can talk to the other 4.
Well,
No,
he won't be relevant.
We're talking about NCLA.
NCLA.
Oh, okay. So just Nisa and Sally, and then Lisa Smith. Yeah.
And I think you should even talk to Suzanne Epstein.
Okay.
Yep, definitely. And who's the other person on the NCLA?
I don't know. Just some person shows up
Cindy.
occasionally.
I know.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll send you an email, Cindy,
Okay.
and if you can meet with the 3 of us, that would be super.
Sure.
Okay.
So any other comments from any of the commissioners?
I wish Julie was here because she had a lot of thoughts at the study session.
I was going to say no reason you can't reach out to her, but then you have the whole Brown Act thing.
I hate the Brown Act. I understand.
Anyway, I really think this is I can't thank you enough. This is fantastic. I think this is a winner, and it shows movement. So thank you. Infrastructure Subcommittee. Should we move on to our next presentation? We're at 8:35 right now. Just take an informal poll. Yes?
Yeah. Yeah. For me.
So that would be the survey results presentation. I believe that's Nelvin.
Mhm.
Hi. Yeah, let me see if I can share my screen. I'm going to go through this really quickly because I know we're already at 8:30. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let me see how I can do this. How do I scroll on this one?
Scroll down.
Oh, I know why. I have the Ring Central app opened. So I can't reach the scroll.
PDF
Okay.
queued up. Okay. If you needed to, I could also bring it up as well too.
And I'm going to try to be fast in this. The majority of the things just kind of detailed data. So back in the 2019 timeframe, about nearly 7,000 patrons returned surveys across the entire Santa Clara County Library District. And of those, roughly 1,000 were from Los Altos and Woodland patrons. Okay, I'm going to skip the issues regarding demographics. There's information in terms of what people find most valuable, and it kind of ties pretty much with our demographics. Basically, it was around adult programs, school age programs, and then preschoolers. Technology and English as a second language somehow were the least named programs. Woodland and is somewhat similar, but there was some switching around between the adult programs versus the school age youth programs. This is the page that I think we would be most interested in from an infrastructure perspective, and that is that you know, across the entire Santa Clara County District, it seemed like there was a perceived need for improved seating flexibility and for quiet areas. And that is definitely the case with regards to Los Altos, where you would see in bold, basically, the fact that for the entire county library district was 85% satisfied, but lower for Los Altos, lower for Woodland, and especially when it comes to, and we're basically about the same as the rest of the county in terms of the perceived need for meeting and group study space. Although Woodland, it was very, it was remarkably noted to be much more needed. And then I presented this during the self-service presentation, but basically 30% of Los Altos patrons and about 40% of Woodland patrons indicated that they would like either self-service hours or a T-card access to the library. And the majority of that seemed to be in the evenings, which is different than what we learned from Ventura County in terms of when they opened up their library for what they call express hours, which was early in the morning. So I think that's something to be explored somewhat. But nonetheless, there is this interest in self-service. So my job on my other subcommittee is to create a memo type of report for the commission to take a look at regarding self-service. Are there any questions?
Well, I'm raising my hand, but does anyone else have questions? My only question, Nelvin, was on the self-service, which is the different subcommittee. Are you looking, are you going to be asking the commission to recommend it or to vote on it at some point? Or what exactly are we trying to do?
Yeah, I think last time around we had a discussion around self-service, and as far as a roundtable discussion, there seemed to be both a consensus around the fact that you believe that this is desirable, and we also had our county representatives say the same, with the caveat that funding needs to be discovered. And I thought that we had agreed at that point that a memo was required if we were to send anything out to inform the city council.
Cool.
Does that ring a bell, or am I misreading what we talked about in our last session?
I think that was right. Is it something that we present to a group like the NCLA? And that's a question for, actually, that's also a question for you, Freddie, what your thought was on that.
On how we present the self-service?
Yeah, would self-service be looked on as something that we, try to get funding from different, be it NCLA, be it Friends, be it Lolly, just the approach?
I really think it was a very small amount of money. It was I think, Melvin, if I'm correct, please correct me. I think it was $12,000 capital expenditures, and then I think something like $12,000 a year for the subscription costs. It was not a lot of money.
No, and you are correct. The numbers could vary depending upon how large the facility is and what type of options we want to have. But basically, the subscription itself is $12K per year with a 3-year commitment.
Okay.
Okay.
So I definitely think that's something that we should, talk to all 3 organizations, Lolly, Friends, and NCLA, to see if it could be funded. It is also something that could be implemented in Woodland, as soon as you get the funding. And that would be it would be a great place to start it, to try it. It would be a great place to kind of do the first experimental work in Los Altos, anyway.
And Steve seems to think that Woodland would be a perfect test case.
Yeah, it would be a perfect test. I mean, it seems to be it would be perfect, and it can be done independent of the expansion. I mean, it can be done now. It's the front door we're talking about.
Great. I just wonder, I thank you for clarifying that. That's sort of what I thought, but I wanted to ask again.
And so here's the question to Jamie in my mind. So if we do the normal process where Nelvin writes up the memo and it's sent to the commission for the commission to approve as the entire body, and then that memo is sent. Usually we have then send it to council to recommend action to council, but in this instance we would be then taking this as an approved project by the library commission that then the commission could go, I guess, I'm asking, the commission could then go and ask Friends, Lolly, NCLA if they would consider funding all or portions of this. Is that the way we would proceed, Jamie?
And Pierre, Cindy has, I think, maybe a comment as well.
Okay.
A good
Cindy?
example that Lolly funded is the Go-Go Biblio. And the reason, the how and why we did it is that it was brought to us by the library, our community librarian, about what the value would be, how it would be implemented, who would be driving it, what it would include. They asked for our input of what we saw as the benefit of looking forward to this unique, innovative type of service and technology. And then there was the ask where she asked for the funding. And so it took us a couple of months to think about it, but the request came from the librarian, which made us understand that it was endorsed by, by the librarian, the library staff, and the county. So, and then we approved it, they purchased it, they took care of all of the logistics. So I think that this is almost an identical case where you all have been working with Rose, but I think at some point Rose needs to have a voice, a very visible presence. If you were to come to Lolly, the first thing we would ask you is, where's Rose on this?
So maybe it would be better for Rose to take the proposal and come to Lolly.
With the understanding and the background information that this is what the commission, including Rose, has investigated. And here's all the background information, but it's coming from Rose and the library and the district.
That sounds, of course, that sounds better. and Rose has already, I mean, Rose, you've already applied for a grant for this last year. So
yeah,
you'd be totally in a position to make the request, or at least discuss it.
That's why I was really happy that I was part of all the interviews that the subcommittee was part of. And of course, I'll be working closely with Steve and with Jennifer to, for next steps on that. But yeah, I'm more than happy to take that proposal to Lolly if that's the direction. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I should note that the purpose of the memo from the commission to the city council is not so much to ask for funds. It's really around information, so that way they understand what's going on. And then secondly, the ask is for cooperation from facilities and IT when we're ready to start designing the system.
But it's my understanding that the library and the county are responsible for anything inside the building. Is this inside or outside the building?
It's both, because you'll have security cameras on the outside and security cameras on the inside.
Okay.
No, and
I would just, oh, sorry, Jamie.
Oh, no, the only thing in all the discussion, and Cindy put it so eloquently, but I think the appropriate action for the commission is that once the information is completed, that it would be an approval of recommendation, because ultimately it's a recommendation to county staff for consideration. And then as it's kind of been discussed, and as Cindy pointed out, that they would want to make sure that the county staff is on board with that, and then you could go further. But I think the appropriate action for the commission would be approval of recommendation once all of that is prepared.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions? Thanks, Nelvin. That's fantastic. And I actually like the fact also that the data is, some of the data you showed is actually used in Freddie's proposal or in the infrastructure. You know, it's good data. It's great data. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Nelvin, and put that in the slide presentation.
Rose?
I just want to second that too. I do. It was very enlightening to be part of all the subcommittee meetings with the different directors of the library, because I was able to see the library perspective, and they gave us so many great tips on how to approach staff, mistakes they made that we could learn from, and so I really appreciate all the research that has been done for this project. It really puts us in a good position if we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. And yeah, the subcommittee did great work there. And speaking of subcommittees, shall we go through our list? And I'll start off with the next item is services, which is Regina and myself. We met with Rose and talked a lot about data and what we're going to do with data at some point, now that we've been shamed by all the other subcommittees. Regina, do you have any?
Does my mic work?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great. No, I don't have any. Yeah, it's very embarrassed, like Pierre said. We need to think harder.
I am working on a review of the O'Reilly books. I have an outline done, but you know, it's not out yet. And but we do have enough data to actually start looking at and making different inferences on the different services. So I'm happy for that. Next is awareness.
Virginia, do you want to talk about the Talon?
Yes, just want to update. Rose actually did a very nice job on producing an ad for the online version of the Talon for summer reading. So I think she figured it out a way to get the ad on the Talon. I hope. Maybe Rose can interject on that. And we also was successful in putting up a notice on the Mid-Peninsula Post. The other thing I think I remember is we had suggested also to put the link of the library on the city website. So it's a good way to promote, I think, all the events of the library. So I think that's with the help of Jamie. So thank you, Jamie. Anything else? We figured out, I think maybe Freddie or Carol can talk more about the PSA.
Yeah, Carol, do you want to talk about the PSAs? We're developing our process, yeah?
Carol, you're muted.
Carol, yeah, you're muted.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. We have 4 contacts for PSAs. Channel 15, the Foothill radio station, Foothill College itself, the marketing person, and the Kiwanis. And they're all set to go. They just have to be provided with the information.
And we're working on that right now. We're working on a process to make it very simple and kind of turnkey to have the events that the library is sponsoring show up as either a PowerPoint or a script, because that's what these different PSA outlets need, either a PowerPoint or a like 15 to 20 second script. And so right now we're working on a process. We have a process that's been proposed, and as soon as we get that done, it will of course be something that we'll have to talk with Rose about how to do this. But because the events change, you want to like refresh the PSA message, like maybe every 2 weeks or so. And so we need to figure out a way to kind of make that as automatic and as pain-free and as possible. That's basically it. We're doing our monthly ad in the town crier, and Rose showed you what this month, June, next Wednesday, you'll see the laptop kiosk.
I only have one question. How are we dealing with the reopening of Woodland? Are we low-keying it or blasting it? And that's a question, Rose, I don't know. I mean, what would you like?
Yeah, as usual, our library, Diane, the marketing team will be putting information out on our website. So, we haven't really talked as the subcommittee on how, the subcommittee could help, but I'm sure it could go out in the various ways too. And I don't know if Jennifer has other ways that it's promoted that I'm missing.
Well, we will be sending out to stakeholders tomorrow, so some of you will seeing that. And we are, again, having Patron Point, which is our new targeted messaging system. So we will be sending out just to Woodland patrons. So they will be the first to get the good news, and we will be then continuing to shout it out.
That's fantastic. Oh, that's great. Super.
I'm not asked for a quote this time. I only get quoted on closures, not openings.
Next time.
Just thought I'd throw that in. But that, you know what? The channels that you've opened are amazing. I mean, KPFA, the Foothill radio station's been there a long time and is very popular. People listen. It's more than just the Foothill station is my point. So congratulations on that. Moving on to futures. Nelvin?
Yeah, I think I've already discussed what we need to do regarding self-service. The other thing that we have on our plate is essentially the roadmap. So I think, we'll have to work on that somewhat, but it's basically around not only what we can do with Woodland, but also what we can do with the main library. And that was the reason for my questions regarding what does it take to kind of ask that NCLA reconstitute the redevelopment task force.
I mean, my only comment on the future stuff is I did do a study, this is for Cindy's benefit, on naming conventions that I put up on my website. I finally got it done, I think, but I announced that last meeting. Cool. And then the work plan subcommittee, Ying had to step out. My only comment there is if you have changes to the work plan, get them to Jamie and we will update the document. Any questions on any of the subcommittees? No? Then we go to potential future agenda items. I'll just kick that off real quick. I just would, it'd be great if we get the memo for discussion and approval on the on the entry for Woodland for next meeting. I don't know if that needs to be an agenda item or not. Also the progress on the NCLA discussions or where we're going, because we won't know about it. The subcommittee is taking that on. So, but again, I don't know that that needs to be an agenda item. Anyone else? Any thoughts on future agenda items? Nope. All right. So with that, 9 o'clock, my apologies, another, long meeting, but thank you very much for hanging in there. This was great. Cindy's presentation was long awaited. Fantastic. Freddie?
I have one question. Does anybody, Jamie, anybody have any idea when they are planning to start having these meetings in person again? I heard something about, I actually heard that the whole Brown Act thing was going to be suspended. I mean, kind of like ended for Zoom meetings by Newsom this month. And that would mean that we had to go back to in-person meetings. Have you heard anything, Jamie, or do we know what's happening?
Not yet, and it's funny that you bring this up. This is something that we're waiting on information for, and so as soon as I have information to share, you will definitely find out, and that's, I will keep you posted.
Okay, but is that what you've heard, that like Zoom is going to be done and everything has to go back to in person?
The one thing that I will say on that piece is, you know, I'm not sure that it's going to be a full, complete stop. And the only reason why I say that is because this virtual world has provided additional access to individuals that may not have necessarily engaged in some of these public meetings. I know for Los Altos, that's something that we have seen, and other, I think, communities have seen similar. So I don't think it might be a full stop. You know, that's something that we've talked about, that maybe it is a hybrid, but that's still in process, still in work, still in discussion. And obviously we're waiting for full direction on kind of what the state puts in place. But I know that's something that us as city staff have talked about, that just over the past 14, 15 months of being completely virtual, we've seen a lot of engagement for many of our public meetings, more so than we've seen in the past. So more to come on that.
Okay. It would be just very interesting, because if, for example, if commissioners were allowed to participate remotely, like I'm having knee replacement surgery at the end of this month. And so like the first meeting in July, you know, if I'm out of the hospital, I will be on the Zoom, but there's no way I could get down to Lacey or wherever the hell we're meeting these days. The orchard room. It was the orchard room. So that would be an interesting, you know, situation if they would allow people who could not physically get down there to participate by, you know, remotely. It would be nice, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
Absolutely. So I will definitely keep you posted.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So a great question. And with that, I officially adjourn this meeting of the Los Altos Library Commission. Thank you all for hanging in there, and great work. I mean, this was like good stuff. So
Good night, everyone.
good night. Bye.
Cindy, I'll send you an email.
All right.